He was decorated, devoted, the kind of man his community called a hero. He wept at his wife's funeral while the man he framed for her murder laid in the next room. And for 11 years, everyone believed him. Springfield, Illinois, 1995. A quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. The kind of street where kids used to ride their bikes until the streetlights came on and people left their doors unlocked. Mark Winger had a stable career as a nuclear safety inspector, a beautiful wife, a brand new baby daughter they had adopted together just months earlier. From the outside, the life he had built looked exactly like the kind of life worth protecting, which made what he was willing to destroy even harder to understand. There are killers who act out of rage, blind, impulsive, cornered with no way out and no time to think. And then there are killers who plan, who construct, who build the story before the crime so that when the moment comes, the world already knows what to believe. They don't react to circumstances, they manufacture them. The most dangerous lies aren't the ones told after the fact. They're the ones built in advance, brick by brick, detail by detail, by someone patient enough to wait. But sooner or later, karma collects. I'm Justin Luther, and these are the Karma Case Files. Donna Winger made the people around her feel like the most important person in the room. Warm, funny, deeply loved. She and Mark had pursued adoption together, and in the spring of '95, they brought home their daughter Bailey. Mark Winger was respected, professionally successful, active in his synagogue, the kind of husband who showed up to community events, who shook hands and made eye contact, who presented a version of himself that nobody had a reason to question. What the community didn't know was that Mark had already begun building a second life, and he had already begun thinking about how to clear the path toward it. In the weeks before the murder, Donna had taken a shuttle service home from a trip to Florida. The driver, a man named Roger Harrington, had behaved erratically during the ride, making strange comments and frightening her enough that she felt compelled to report it. She told Mark. She wrote a formal complaint letter to the shuttle company, and Mark listened carefully to every word. Because Mark had recognized something, Roger Harrington, a man with a documented history of mental illness, a man who had already frightened his wife, a man whose name was now on a complaint letter, was exactly the kind of person who could be made to look like a killer. Mark Winger was having an affair with a woman named Deanne. Donna was in the way. The marriage was in the way. But divorces are messy. They cost money, they invite scrutiny, and they don't come with a life insurance payout. So Mark built something else instead. He reached out to Roger Harrington directly, not to confront him, not to escalate the complaint. According to what prosecutors would later argue, he used the contact to draw Harrison in, to set the stage for what was coming. The complaint letter became the motive. The troubled driver became the villain. All Mark needed now was the moment. On the evening of August 29, 1995, Mark Winger called 911. When police arrived, they found Donna beaten to death with a hammer. Roger Harrington laid nearby, shot twice in the head, dying from wounds he would not survive. Mark told investigators he had come home to find Harrington in the middle of an attack on his wife, that he had retrieved his legally owned firearm, that he had shot Harrington to stop him, but by then, it was already too late for Donna. He was, on the surface, a husband who had tried to save his wife and arrived seconds too late. It was a clean story, a devastating story. He told it well, and for a long time, investigators had no reason not to believe him. The case was closed almost immediately. Roger Harrington, unstable, documented, already the subject of a formal complaint, fit the narrative. He was dead. He couldn't offer another version of events. Mark Winger received an outpouring of sympathy. His community surrounded him. He was not a person of interest. He was a widower, a grieving father raising an infant daughter alone. Within a year, he married Deanne, the woman he had been seeing while Donna was still alive. He built a new life, a new family, and for 11 years, the version of Mark Winger that the world knew was the one that he had constructed. The case didn't crack open because of a DNA match, a new forensic technology, or anonymous tip. It cracked open because of a woman who had been living with the weight of what she knew, and eventually decided she could no longer carry it. Deanne Winger went to the police in 2001. She told investigators that years earlier, Mark had told her the truth, that he had been the one to strike Donna with a hammer, that Roger Harrington had been lured to the house, that the scene had been arranged before the first 911 call was ever made. She had known, she had married him anyway, and then years later, something shifted, and she walked into a police station and told them everything. Once investigators reopened the case, the physical evidence that had once seemed to confirm Mark's story began to tell a different one. The positioning of the bodies, the nature of Donna's wounds, the trajectory of the shots fired at Harrington, the timeline of events that evening. Taken together, they didn't match the story of a husband arriving home mid-attack. They matched something that had been staged by someone who understood exactly how a crime scene would be read. Add to that the life insurance policy on Donna, the affair, the financial motive, the testimony of the woman he had married after burying his wife. Prosecutors built the case piece by piece, and each piece fit. I want to stop here for a moment because Roger Harrington deserves that. He was not a killer. He was a troubled man, possibly frightened and confused, drawn into a house under circumstances he may never have fully understood. He was used, manipulated, and made to be a villain, and then he was shot dead. 2 people lost their lives that night in that house, one because she was in the way of what her husband wanted, and the other because he was useful. Mark Winger was arrested in 2001 and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The trial dismantled 11 years of assumed innocence in front of a jury. Neighbors who had consoled him, community members who had prayed beside him and watched him grieve, all of them witnesses to the architecture of a lie that had held together for over a decade. The jury convicted Mark Winger of 2 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is Karma Case File number 4, a man who built a perfect lie and wore it like the truth for over a decade. He buried his wife. He buried the man he used. Then he moved on. He remarried. He rebuilt. He lived the life that lie gave him. And for 11 years, it worked. Until one person who knew the truth decided she was done protecting it. And just like that, the story that made him a hero became the very thing that destroyed him. I'm Justin Luther, and these are the Karma Case Files. Have a case you want featured? Send it in. Follow for more real stories where actions have consequences. Until next case. Have a case you want featured? Send it in. Follow for more real stories where actions have consequences. Until next case.